Welcome back to another episode of Knight Rider. If you are new here, we slow down here, right? We try to take our time. This is a thinking, pondering kind of podcast, for those of you who would like to listen to the soothing sounds of my voice. That's what we're doing here. We're thinking, put this out at like 2:30 a.m. For all my friends who work the night shift. I always think of some guy who's like in a squad car on the night shift in his first year, 2 or 3 or 4th year or whatever in the police department, right? Or in the fire department. And it's got a lot to do or nothing to do with a lot of time, something like that. So this is for you. Good friend of mine who's out there super early in the morning or late at night, depending on how you're counting, right? And you want to make the best of the time. And so I hope that this Knight Rider episode and all of these Knight Rider episodes serve you well by helping you engage your brain and think a little bit and philosophize with me and ponder. And that's really what I'm trying to do with these episodes. I like to slow down and think. I'm sure you'll be shocked to know that I majored in philosophy a very long time ago now. But I like to think. And I hope you like to think. And I'm sure for the dozens of you that watch these, that's what you're doing too, right? You like to think. This right here is my mace. I got this recently. I haven't tried it a ton, but I'm trying to do the cool mace swings. But I think it makes a cool prop for this, and it's like a throne kind of pillar thing. Anyway, so recently I watched the movie 16 Candles. 16 Candles came out in 1984, before I was born, and it's a John Hughes movie. John Hughes, he wrote and directed The Breakfast Club. He wrote and directed Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He wrote Pretty in Pink. He wrote Home Alone. He wrote the Beethoven movies. He wrote quite a lot. If you're a millennial like me, he wrote a lot of the kind of big movies of your childhood. A lot of the movies that you grew up on. And if you're a Gen Xer, again, probably wrote a lot of some key movies for you, like Breakfast Club, like 16 Candles, etc., right? He's passed now, John Hughes, but kind of famous for these movies. And so I went back and watched 16 Candles, never seen it. Didn't really know what it was about, but knew it was kind of a more famous cult classic. I don't know what cult classic, but a more well-known movie of that era. I'm a big movie guy. I like watching lots of movies. And I didn't like it. And it's not that I didn't like it because it was a bad quality. It was a poor quality film. That's not why I didn't like it, right? Like, the acting is great. The writing is pretty snappy, pretty quippy, pretty good. Like, the directing and stuff is fine. As a movie, I think it's actually a good movie. I would tell you, if you want to watch a movie on a date night with your wife, you'd probably enjoy it. It's kind of funny. It's a fine movie. But I didn't like it because of what it said about our culture. This is 1984, okay? Just before, again, if you're like me, you're a millennial, just before we all kind of are born. And this movie is a great time capsule of America in decline, but nobody knows it yet. So the movie revolves, and I'll try not to ruin it, because again, I think you'd actually enjoy it as a movie if you like movies. This movie revolves around this girl, and she's 16 Candles, haha. And it's a coming of age story. It's her trying to find herself. Her dad is kind of adult, just kind of the typical adult. dad character, works at some office job, owns a huge house, a couple cars, has like 4 kids. They all live very comfortably and happy, because you can do that in the 80s, right? Well, that doesn't sound like decline, Dylan. We're getting there. And she has a younger brother who is just like the mean bully younger brother, this character, right? Like, he just makes snarky comments to his parents and to her and says horrible, mean things. Like the whole movie, the kid has like 10 lines, and they're all just like intentionally like over the top, comedically cruel things to say. And so this whole movie, she's like trying to find herself. And she's a teenager, and so it revolves around a lot around having sex or talking about sex. There's other teenage characters in there that are obsessed with having sex or partying or whatever. And she meets this boy, And I was watching this movie, and I thought, one, let's say I'm a dad, which I am. And let's say my sons and my daughters grow up to be like this girl. My daughters grow up, they hit 16, and they need to go find themselves. And I think, and that revolves around sex or meeting a boy or whatever. And I thought, if I get to that point, I've failed as a dad. I failed as a dad. Well, why? Because you don't want your daughter out there banging people? Well, yeah. But more importantly, it's because I've failed to give my kids, my children, mission, vision, direction. Like, if we reach that point, that is what I will have failed to do as a dad. I will have failed, I've been derelict in my duty of imparting my values, truth to my kids. The reason this girl has to go out there and find herself is because her parents never imparted value to her. And it's obviously a story that a lot of us resonate with. My Gen X friends, I'm sure you resonate with that. I, as a millennial, resonate with that. Love my parents to death, right? So sorry, Mom and Dad, don't mean to put you on blast if you ever see this, but they didn't impart mission, vision, or direction to me. Particularly not in my teen years. And not that I was the easiest teenager, but they never imparted mission, vision, or direction. And I think at that point in their lives, it's because they didn't have any. And if you think back on your childhood, I'm willing to bet a substantial amount of money that your parents did not impart mission, vision, or direction to you. They didn't impart their values to you. Instead, you probably remember being a teenager and starting to believe things or read things or see things or fall in with certain crowds or whatever, and your parents being shocked. Why are you doing that? Why would you say that? How could you believe that? And if you reach that point as a parent, where were you for the first 15 years? I think about that as a parent a lot. If I'm not teaching my kids the values today, well, I have no right to show up in 1, 2, 10, however many years, right? And be suddenly shocked that they didn't adopt my value system. Suddenly just flabbergasted, right? That they don't believe what I believe. Well, how could you not know that's wrong? It's obviously wrong. How don't you know that? Well, because you, the parent, specifically dad, never told them. You didn't impart that value. You didn't talk about why that's important. You didn't demonstrate it. You didn't adhere to that value and then explain to your children why you're adhering to that value. You didn't give them big picture, big truths that they can grow into. I heard this line once from a pastor preaching a sermon, and he said, you got to give your kids big truths that they can grow into. And I thought that's a pretty good line. That's a pretty good line. You got to give your kids big truths that they can grow into. Jesus Christ is King. Do I expect my children to fully grasp what that means? God willing, right? They repent, they believe in Jesus, they get the Holy Spirit. Like, yes, I want them to be converted, to know Jesus. Also, like, even if that happens, and they do repent, and a couple of my kids have, right? And they know Jesus. Well, they're still growing there, right? They're still kids. They're still not going to grasp the full depth of that. Not, for the record, not that I grasp the full depth of that either, right? Like, we're all learning. He's God, He's infinite. But I want to give them something big that they can grow into. If you ever read or have read the Chronicles of Narnia, if you haven't read it in a while, you should. That's a book that the older you get, the more you find the little hidden Easter eggs. It grows with you, which is a very, very unique thing to be able to do with story, by the way. But C.S. Lewis was able to do that. So we want to give our kids things that they can grow into, and we want to give them a big worldview. And here we are, 1984, 16 Candles, and it's a perfect encapsulation of nobody's imparting values to their kids. They just kind of assume they'll pick them up by osmosis. They send them to school thinking that school will teach them values. I don't know. I don't know. And I get it, right? Most people don't actively think of that. I don't believe that most people are foresightful, meaning able to kind of look ahead and make decisions now to affect the future. I don't think most people do that. I mean, yeah, okay, some people save money, right? Or you plan for next week or whatever. But I'm talking about like thinking down, like, what do I want my kids to be like when they're 25? I don't think most people ask that question. They think, oh, 25, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. That's what they say, right? I'll feel so old, like that's so far away. Or, I can't believe it's going to happen. Like there's a semi-denial about it, which I understand. But I think about that a lot. I say to my wife, baby, in so many years, our son's going to be driving. So many years, he's going to be 18. So many years, he's going to be 25. Like, time is short. And it's coming. And so I'm thinking, what can we do today to affect that in the long run, right? I think so much of life is cumulative. And what I mean, cultivation is cumulative. That's the catchphrase here. Cultivation is cumulative. What does that mean? Well, let's use weightlifting as an example because it's simple, right? So here I got this. Whoa, hello. I got this cool mace thing, right? Right now there's 7.5 pounds on here because I got it the other day, and I'm still learning how to do the cool mace swing thing, right? I do that. I'll add a pound. We'll be at 8.5. Jump up to 10. We'll go to 12. We'll go to 15. And in a couple months, if I'm consistent in my swings and I learn the technique and my shoulders are getting bigger, I'll be swinging 25, 35. 50, right? Pounds, whatever it is, I don't know. I guess most men are supposed to aim for like 70. 70 pounds on a mace is, well, that's no joke. 70 pounds. That's a lot of weight to swing on a mace. You don't do that overnight, right? You cumulatively get there over time. Same with almost any strength training. It's a little bit by little bit today, so that next week I'm a little stronger, next month I'm a little stronger, next year I'm stronger, and you look back over 4 years and you're like, holy crap, we went up a lot, So much of life is like that. If you want to get better at shooting, well, did you do your dry fire yesterday? Did you do it today? Did you put in that 10 minutes? Did you put in that 15 minutes, right? So much of life is like that. You want your kids to not be degenerate louts? Well, did you talk with them today about who Jesus is? Did you explain why we live how we live? You want them to balance their money well or know how credit card works? Well, have you pulled up the credit card statement and walked them through what you spend your money on? Have you explained to them how credit cards work and when bills are due and when things come in the mail? I remember I was 18 and a half, and went into a bank and got a credit card. And I had it linked to my checking account. At the time, I didn't really know what that meant, but they basically explained that it was like an overdraft protection, so that if I ever overcharged my checking account, it would charge my credit card. And I didn't really grasp that as a concept. And, I got the credit card company would mail me things every so often, but I thought, well, I never spent any money on my credit card. So I thought, well, I didn't open them because I'm not spending any money on the credit card. There's no bill due on the credit card, right? Because I always learned credit cards were dangerous. Don't use a credit card. So I didn't. Well, then one day I had maxed it out. It was like $700, and they had called me to tell me that it was maxed out. And I was like, how is this possible? And my dad was so mad at me. He was so mad at me for being irresponsible and maxing this credit card out. And how could I be so irresponsible, right? But the truth was, I didn't know. And my parents were like, well, you were getting statements in the mail. I said, yeah, but I didn't spend any money. I didn't open it. They're like, well, they don't send you a statement unless you're spending money. I said, well, I didn't know that. Which I don't know if that's true, by the way. I think you'd still get a $0 statement. I don't know. But straight up, I didn't know, right? No one ever told me. Obviously wasn't super great with managing my money, right? Because I was obviously overdrafting on my checking account, which caused it to come into my credit card, right? But I didn't know. No one ever imparted that value to me. No one ever explained that to me. My parents never sat me down and walked me through a checking book or how to balance my checkbook, right? That was before online banking, right? I'm sure you all remember that. But that was a struggle there, right? So, again, how are you imparting those values? And the reason I didn't like the 16 Candles movie is because I thought it was this great time capsule of how these values aren't being passed down. Again, the fact that this girl has to go find herself, and I put that in air quotes here, right, is because no one ever told her who she was. No one ever imparted value to her. No one ever explained that, hey, sister, in this house, Jesus is king. And not just of this house, but of the city and of the nation and of the world. And he is God, and he establishes ways that we should live and not live to honor him and bring him glory. And he will come again to judge the living and the dead. And it'll be a glorious day and a terrifying day. And all wickedness and evil will be punished forever. And all sin that's covered by the blood of Jesus will be forgiven forever. And God will remake the world without fault or sin or issue. And we will live in paradise where things don't decay, where no one gets sick, where no one dies, where no one gets angry with someone else because they screwed something up, where no one commits lying or stealing or murder or adultery ever again. That's reality. That's the reality we live in. And so because of that, we don't lie now. So because of that, we don't have sex with people we're not married to. So because of that, we try to be patient with people. Right? No one ever gave that girl an identity. No one ever gave you an identity. You defined it for yourself. And that's why you can relate to the coming of age stories. I like The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I think it's a fun movie, right? I like SLC Punk. It's a great movie. But these movies, they're so relatable and they're so great because you felt that lostness. So again, time capsule of America. Everything's actually pretty terrible, but nobody notices. Well, no one notices because the chart is going up and to the right. That's probably up and to your left. Up and to the right. Is that your right? No one notices because the graph's going up and to the right, meaning stocks are rising, people are making money, right? As long as companies are growing and more money is coming in, then everything must be good. Because we just became a nation ruled by economists, where it's like that's the only thing that matters. Is that wages are going up, costs are going down, the stock market is going up. That means we're all doing better, right? Like, it's a joke. It's been hollowed out, but no one notices yet because life's pretty damn comfortable, right? You can support a family of like 4 kids and a wife and a pretty big house and a couple cars, and for them to do all the activities off some office job or as a union man. You've worked the same job for 30 years in the union and can afford a comfortable life. Nowadays, if you make less than $100K in almost any part of the country and you have a family, life is very hard for you likely. And you have to decide what you can and can't buy this month. That's crazy, by the way. You've been robbed of that, right? And what does that do to like a people? You know what I mean? What does that do to a generation? Raised without values, raised to just be told money's basically God, and you can just work for it, and then you'll be good. That's it. That's what life's really about, is money. Because you can be mad at the teenager for taking the Lord's name in vain or having sex outside of marriage or whatever. You can be mad at them for whatever you want, but what have you taught them with your life? Right? Well, you taught them that dad works for 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 hours a week and makes lots of money. You've taught them that's what's important. You've taught them that's the God we serve. Money. Which I would argue was the primary God for most of my lifetime, right? The chart's got to go up and to the right. What do we always get upset with the president about? Well, the economy's not doing well. The economy's got to do well. What does that mean? The chart's got to go up and to the right. Well, we need to import more immigrants. The chart must go up and to the right. These companies need cheap labor. If they can't get cheap labor, how are they going to make money? How is the chart going to go up to the right? Right? That's the thing that we keep coming back to all the time, is the chart going up and to the right. So like I said, what does that do to a generation? My generation, as a millennial, or my Gen X friends, right? We're generations raised without values. One of my favorite movies is Fight Club, And there's a great line in there by Brad Pitt about, we're a generation of men raised by women. I'm wondering if another woman is exactly what we need, right? So it's an early recognizing of The Long House back in 1999. But my point is that, like, again, what does that do to a generation? I remember being in my 20s and really trying to think about what does it mean to be a man? Because again, no one ever told me. That wasn't a value that was imparted to me. I had to figure that out on my own. So I'm in the car with my parents, and I'm talking to my parents about this. Like, I'm not sure what that means. I don't know what it means to be a man. And my mom says, well, to my dad, what do you think it means to be a man? And my dad thought, and he's like, I don't know. And my mom was like, well, that's the problem right there. And she's not wrong. I thought it was harsh and a little mean, but she's not wrong, right? But I think, like, again, I'm just an example of all of us, I think. I think that's highly relatable to you, probably. No one ever really explained that to you. Or maybe if you were lucky, you got some vapid thing about winning on the sports ball field. You know? Well, what it means to be a man is we're going to beat the other team in the sports ball. Or, you know, it's winning. Winning is what makes you a man. You got to be tough. Or something like that. Not that winning is bad. And I want my kids to have grit and determination and toughness. That is important. But are those all encompassing of what it means? We'll have to do another Knight Rider episode maybe about what it means to be a man. But like I don't, again, like those values weren't imparted. And I think when you play that out over a couple generations, again, Gen X, millennials, and you don't pass down the values, what do you get? Well, you get America in 2026. Some husk of a nation that really isn't a nation. You know, I guess there's a common federal government that everyone has to pay money to that says they're in charge. But it's pretty anarcho-tyranny, you know. Anybody born here for any reason at all. Do you know you can be, you know, the Supreme Court recently ruled about the birthright citizenship thing. You can actually be born in a plane flying over America and still be an American citizen. Did you know that? Isn't that wild? You don't even have to be like on the soil. You just have to be in the plane, in the airspace, and that counts. You have people who fly here just to give birth so that their kids can get, you know, tax benefits and American citizenship and collect all of the myriad of social programs, and they go home. Make sure we can get them all signed up, and they go home. They go live abroad. They're an American abroad. Got to take care of those Americans. That's not a country, right? Like, I don't know what you want to call that, but that we're not really a country. We have nothing to like bind us together. It's certainly not any kind of racial affiliation. Certainly not at this point, you know, when you have millions and millions of people being imported here who are from all parts of the world. It's not a creed because no one could say what the creed is. And if we could agree on it, could we agree that, okay, people who don't agree to that creed, they're out, right? Well, no, you can't say that. You got to have a freedom of opinion. So it's not a creed. So what is it, right? What is America? What makes an American? And my point is, we have no cohesive cultural values because for at least 2 generations now, we've had no imparting of values that have been passed down. And unless you know history really well, and I think I know history really well, and I think it's hard for me to grasp, you don't understand how insane that is. You don't understand how insane it is that your values wouldn't be passed down for hundreds of years. That you would have values and commitments going back hundreds of years. It feels like so old-timey and, you know, like, oh, like who? Oh, it's just, it feels un-American even, and just old-fashioned and just decrepit and not anachronistic, but I can't think of a word. Essentially, like outdated trash that we've evolved past is what that sounds like, right? That's what that sounds like. So, it's a crazy time that we live in. I think you have to understand that. Like it's actually a pretty crazy time to be alive, because in a lot of ways we're a lost generation. And I don't necessarily mean this to be like, oh, we're a lost generation, we're so sad and feel bad for me. I just want you to recognize like the facts. Recognize the facts on the surface. And I would say the facts on the surface are, you have generations of Americans that were raised without a common value set. And now the money's running out. So we don't even have that anymore. So what are we doing here? Like what binds that together? What makes that a people? What makes that a nation? What makes that a society or a culture worth saving? That's an open question. Because again, without those things, I don't know what you have. Because I don't think it's a country or a culture. How do you have a culture without a common set of values? And how do you have values when everyone's just making them up on their own? You know, when I was a kid, all of the sexual degeneracy was hot, right? You had Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera, and you had these beautiful women exposing themselves, and it was lusty and it was like hot. It was like, oh yeah, like that's desirable. I look at this degeneracy and it's desirable. Now, you look at the sexual degeneracy and it's so repugnant. I don't understand how anyone could desire it. Right? There's no like primal instinct towards it. In fact, it's quite the opposite, right? You have a Billie Eilish, right? Who's just like dead in her eyes, right? And on drugs and gives interviews about how when she masturbates in a mirror, it turns her on. Right? This really like soul-sucking, just like repugnant, sad, right? You have the whole tranny thing, which is a whole other thing, right? Of people permanently mutilating themselves for life to look uglier. None of that's like desirable. There's not a primal instinct to that. Right? You don't look at that and be like, oh, that's like, I want that. No, you look at that and like, what is, like, why? Like, there's that repugnantness to it. And one flows to the other, right? Because we had the degeneracy in the late 90s, early 2000s, we have the degeneracy now. And because we had the degeneracy in the 80s, values not being passed down, people just kind of left to themselves to figure it out. No cohesion or culture, or just living in a dying shell of a society where there were no values anymore that were being taught to the younger generation to continue. You get the late 90s, early 2000s. And because you had the sexual revolution in the 60s and the 70s, you get the 80s. I'm sure we could keep going back. But my point being that when you stop imparting the values, you're just a couple generations away from going extinct. Because again, what's there to bind? The money? Well, the money's running out. Right? A couple of technocrats with billions or maybe trillions of dollars, you know, and some more AI data centers, maybe some more flock cameras can hold us together. Can't arrest criminals. You understand what I'm saying? At least I hope you do. And so I think that a lot of it comes down to the imparting of the values. I think a lot of it comes down to giving your kids mission, vision, direction, purpose, identity that are built, and they should be built, on Jesus, Christ is King, yes and amen. And I think they should also be built on, well, you know, like Jesus, truth. That's not right. That's morally wrong. We don't do that. That full stop. It's morally wrong. Why is it morally wrong, Dad? Well, because God says it's morally wrong. And He's God. And He created the universe, so He makes the rules. Not me. I don't make the rules. God says things that I disagree with. But it doesn't matter if I agree with them or disagree with them. It matters what God says. And we are going to do what God says. We're going to live in fear of the Lord. That's an identity. Right? Well, for generations, our family has done X. That's an identity. You see this in farmers a lot, which again is dying because the graph's got to go up and to the right. So these boomers are selling off their family farms that have been in their families for generations, or worse yet, they divide them between the kids, right? You have like 500 acres, and it's like, okay, we can all get like 100 apiece. Well, you can't really effectively full-time farm on that, you know? So now the kids piecemeal it off, they sell it off to someone else and just gets absorbed into some corporate conglomerate thing, and the family farm that was on that plot of land since it was claimed in 1862, it's gone. That's not an identity, right? When your great-great-great-grandfather built that farmhouse, right, and you guys still use the old root cellar, the original one, and now you're going to piecemeal that thing off? That's not a legacy, right? So, what kind of mission, vision, direction, values, identity are we imparting to our kids? That is the only question now that matters. You, if you're like me, got handed a raw deal, less than optimal deal, right? You had to maybe figure that stuff out yourself. Maybe you're still figuring that out yourself. But more than likely, if you're watching this or listening to my voice, you didn't get mission, vision, direction imparted to you. And if you did, count yourself lucky. Like if you got a real mission, vision, direction from your parents, that's a blessing. I'm glad for you. I'm genuinely glad for you. But most of us didn't. We had to figure it out. So, how are you going to prevent that from happening to your kids? Because it's not just part of growing up, guys. It's not just like, well, they're a teenager, they got to find themselves. I had to figure it out. They'll have to figure it out. Not with the big pieces. It's not like that. Little things, right? Like we do exploratory learning in our house. I let my kids figure problems out. Well, you want to add these two boards to the treehouse? Here's some nails, here's a hammer. Let's see how it goes. That's exploratory learning, right? That's fun. Let's do that. But am I letting them figure that out about who God is or morality or what we want the country to be? Absolutely not. Why is that? Because I'm a mean, oppressive, kind of jerk person who just wants to, build a dystopian dictatorship universe? Well, no. It's because I'm sane. It's because I understand that there's objective truths that we need to pass on to our kids. There's values that are worth passing down. We call them values because they're valuable, right? And those things are precious and valuable, and I want my children to believe them, and I want them to pass them down to their kids, and on we go. Just because I was handed nothing in that department, it doesn't mean I should continue that trend. Let's just have every red generation reinvent the wheel again, right? That's a terrible idea. So how are you going to pass those values down to your kids so that you're not the dolt dad in 16 Candles who's watching his daughter walk off with some random dude that he's never seen before and get in the car with him and just think, oh, well, I guess that's just growing up. Pass those values down, gentlemen. Cultivation is cumulative. I've been reading Exodus recently, right? When God establishes the Passover, he talks about how you're going to do this ceremony every year. And you're going to tell your kids why you're doing it every year. What is that? That's God creating a culture and creating values that you're going to pass down to your kids. Right? The Israelites don't do that in the Old Testament and fall into all kinds of debauchery. Different sermon. Pass down the values. We're a house that believes in Christ as King. We believe that people have real, actual rights. We believe that criminals should be punished for crime. And there are some crimes so bad that you deserve capital punishment. Right? We don't think that communism is good. In fact, it's a great evil. My children know communism is a great evil in all of its forms. Now, do they fully grasp that yet? No, probably not. But I hope they will one day. And they won't ever be easily snookered into believing that communism is great, because they'll be like, oh, wait a second. Didn't communism in the 20th century result in the death of 100 million people? I don't know how that could be good. Like, that's going to be a pretty good hurdle to overcome for the person who wants to convince my children that communism is good and I was just wrong and a greedy capitalist, right? Like, impart values to your children of things that are true. Don't make them flounder and reinvent the wheel and have to find themselves and go through the typical teenage adolescent rebellion. That doesn't have to happen, by the way. It's not part of just growing up. Just because you and I had to do that doesn't mean that's normal. That happened, again, because no one told you didn't have to. Because you were left to flounder. Why would you ever want to do that to your kids? Why would you ever want to do that to our country? There will be an after. After